Hello, my lovely viewers, and welcome. I am Kira, a romantic ace, and welcome to this speed build. So my concept for this was to essentially build my own home, but make it look a little bit nicer and keep it looking interesting in The Sims, because I essentially live in a box. I live in multifamily housing. I have a grand total of 2 windows and a patio door. That's all the natural light that I get. And of course I share most of my walls with my neighbors. It's not very big, so that's why I'm building on this lot in Windenburg, on the Windenburg Island. Because I didn't need a lot of space, and I didn't want it to get too big. But I also add this second story just to keep it looking a little bit more interesting. You'll see in a minute when I add that. And I didn't really have room for stairs, but we have ladders now, so you can just use that pass-through. I didn't have much of a floor plan in mind for this second floor when I built it. I was just trying to have something that would allow me to do some interesting roof lines. And I really like the way it turned out. I ended up turning it into a little cottage. So, because it's kind of about the size of what I live in is about a cottage. But really trying to figure out how I wanted to do this roofing. I gave myself this deck because my patio where I live is only about one side of that. So I have a side door, this direction that I'm facing. It would only be as long as that wall in real life. And it is covered, but I couldn't find a way to make it look nice and have it be covered with all of these roofs. So I just left it open. I thought it was nice. But I moved into my home in 2014, right before the housing market really took off in the city where I live. It was already on its way up, but for reference, I bought my home for half of what it is now worth. My property taxes have gone up a lot in the intervening 6 years, but it's still cheaper than renting in this area because I did manage, my grandmother died at the appropriate moment and left my family a lot of life insurance. And so my mother took part of hers and we locked it up in the down payment for this property. So my mortgage was very small. My mortgage was about as big as a car loan, but spread over 10 years. And that is now the only money that my father cannot touch. He has spent all of the rest of her inheritance. Financial abuse is a real thing. And this is why, you know, we harp on people so much of, you know, have a fuck off fund. Have a fund that your spouse or partner does not touch because they can spend it all. They can try to use it to keep you trapped in a situation where you don't want to be. You know, getting a little heavy here in the first 3 minutes of this speed build, but here we are. I'm adding just a bunch of windows because it would be really nice to have more windows. And more to the point, it would be nice to have more insulated windows. I have one window, which is a cool idea. It's original to my home. So my home was built in 1978. Right after they stopped using asbestos and everything. I cleared just in time, thank goodness, because when I took down the popcorn ceilings in here, I was actually very concerned about that. But I did have them tested. There's no asbestos in them. But one of the windows is this small little window box. And it's made to have like small plants and stuff on it. That's what a lot of us have. And they have these little cranks that you can use to kind of leverage the top open so that you can get some fresh air. But mine is broken. And there's no one, because this is 1978 vintage, no one can fix this. No one can really replace it. But I don't want to, like, get rid of it because it's such an interesting feature. And I don't even know if they sell windows that would fit in that hole. And I don't have authority to change any of the walls on the exterior of the build. So, like, I wouldn't have the authority to come in and cut a bigger hole for a window. So I'm kind of just stuck with it being broken. You know, I kind of try to take some wires because right now you're supposed to be able to crank it down and kind of make that upper part sit tight. And I can't do that right now because it's broken. So it just kind of sits. So when the wind blows, you can kind of hear it get up underneath. So I just have some thermal curtains to try to keep the cold and the heat from getting inside. But I do have that fireplace. I do have a wood-burning fireplace in my home. So, and it is on that diagonal. And I usually just fudge it in builds like that and just say, nah, that, you know, it's just nestled into the corner because I don't want to deal with that diagonal wall. I don't like dead space in my builds like that. I want to use every single tile that I possibly can in a Sims 4 build, but in this case, it's like, nah, to be as true to this as I can be, which this living room is actually quite a lot larger than what I live in. If you were to look at the layout of what I live in, it would look like it's fewer tiles, because when I'm planning a Sims build based off of a real life floor plan, I usually figure that each tile is roughly 3 foot square, 1 meter square. And it seems to work pretty well because your sim kind of fits in one tile. And your average person, when they're standing still, comfortably fits in like a 3 foot square or a 1 meter square. So that's usually how I calculate the size of a build, but here I really wanted to have these doors, which mine are sliding doors, but again, I wanted this little bit more cottage look. So I wanted those bigger doors, the bigger windows, to bring in more light. So it's really matched to the size of that wall with the double doors on it. And then my kitchen, which is off to the right, is an 8 foot by 8 foot galley style kitchen that does come back a little bit farther than the front door of my property. But the like in my property, that living room door, or that living room wall, would actually be even with my door, flush with my door. So that living room would actually be even bigger in real life than it is in this, but I wanted to have a little bit of a front entry because that's something I don't have. I kind of have a half wall that separates from the kitchen, and then everything else is just open to the living room. So it's hard to have a place to put your coats. It's hard to have a place to put your bags. When I first moved in, actually ended up putting coat hangers on that half wall, like just underneath, because what I have is actually a half wall with countertop on top, and that's what separates the kitchen from the rest of the room. And then I have like a further wall, like that hangs down from the ceiling that mounts the cabinets onto it. So you can see here, I play some tricks a little bit later to get cabinets that hang in that way, because the other times that I've tried to do something that looks like that, I've played a trick with that window from Island Living, that long, narrow, like short window that's very short in this direction and long in this direction. And I've had that be kind of the pass through, but that's not what I have in this build. It's in my home. It's literally just, like that's literally all it is. I also don't even have a column in that spot, but I kind of needed it in order to have the spandrels that kind of help separate the space. And this bathroom is also not the layout of my bathroom. My bathroom in real life would be 2 tiles wide and 3 tiles long. And it's a shower tub combo, but I really didn't like the look of any of the shower tub combos. Even though they're true to what I have, it didn't match the aesthetic that I wanted for this. So I changed it around a little bit. I gave myself a bigger bathroom with a separate tub and shower. And windows where there are no windows. But I loved the look of this. It's very similar color palette to what I have in real life, although in my home the tiles are only in the shower and not all the way around. But it's kind of impractical to me to have a bathroom that the walls are painted, because in my bathroom, I have no vent to the outside. Most of the time, code for buildings is that the exhaust fan, has to go to the outside because it reduces mold. Well, in my home, it's literally just a recirculating fan with a little charcoal filter in it that's supposed to help. And it really doesn't. So actually, since I live alone, I never close my bathroom door when I'm showering, just to try to keep the mold and the hard water stains to a minimum, because I painted my walls this dark olive green color that went really well with the color of the tile. And you can see here I've finally played that trick with with taking the wall away, making it into a half wall after I place the cabinets. That's how you do that, by the way. You build a regular wall, you mount the cabinets to that, and then you take the wall away or you turn it into a half wall. That's how you do that trick. I had to watch speed builders do that several times before I figured out just how they did it, but that's how. But anyway, with the bathroom, with that dark olive green color, I started to see these white streaks down my walls, and it was like, oh my god, what is that? And I would take with some just like glass cleaner and scrub it off, and you can take it right off, but it's hard water stains. A lot of places in Colorado have very hard water. I lived in a property in the mountains for a very short time while I was on an internship. I basically house sat for a friend, and their water was well water that was so hard that you had to spray down the shower every time you got out. Just like spray it down with some jet dry, because if you didn't, the next day, everything in the shower would just be white. Like, the shower was already white to try to camouflage that, but like the shower door would be completely opaque. I was warned about this. And you could see it in the toilets too. It would get really bad toilet rings that were white because it was just hard water, but you would have to like basically chisel it off. It was horrible. Horrible. But as you can see here, I'm coming in. This is, like I said, bigger than my actual home, but I do have this. This wall is basically a couple of bookcases and then the console that my TV sits on. And the console that my TV sits on is not this fancy. It's not this, you know, nifty knitting kind of thrifted looking style, but I really like that style. I love most of the furniture from Nifty Knitting, and I even like a lot of the brighter colors on it. I really love that teal color that they gave with it. You can see here that couch is from Parenthood. I did this same color palette with the furniture in one of the Windenburg cafes that I redid. You can see that speed build on my channel as well. I am absolutely shocked by how well those swatches match. They can't match wood tones in The Sims 4, but for some reason they can match those cushions. It's fascinating. And I do not have room for a coffee table in my home, certainly not one that size, but this was so big. I was like, when else do I get to use the coffee table that's that size? And that table, in the swatch where it's white and natural wood, I basically have that exact table. It is that light natural wood swatch on top with the white legs. It is that turned like country looking style. That is my table, just in a different color. I wanted the yellow to kind of call back to the yellow pillows on those on the couch and love seat. And in my home, I don't have room for a love seat, so that Nifty Knitting love seat wouldn't be there. But the couch would be there, and then the little desk off to the side, which in my home, that's my combination sewing and streaming desk. In fact, you can see behind me, that's my fireplace right there. The stacked stone fireplace. That is the fireplace that you see in this build. Just, you know, I'm having to make it look different for the build. But you're looking right at that spot where I'm sitting at that computer, right? Here's the door. I just have curtains over it, but here's that door. And then the fireplace is behind me, and you can see the bookcase as well. So like literally that's what you're looking at, is that spot. But I would really love to have those be separate spaces, because it is kind of a pain in the ass. If I want to sew, I literally have to break down most of my setup that I use for streaming, and vice versa. When I want to stream, I have to take that and put it all back. And I would really love, if I was picking things in the world, I would want the place where I live now, but I would just want another bedroom. Because the amount of space that I have is just about right for me. One person living alone. My executive functioning is so poor that I can't really do a lot of maintenance. I really don't want to have to go out and mow my lawn all the time in the summer. I don't want to have to try to pay somebody to upkeep landscaping for me. I would love to have a little space to like do some gardening, but truth be told, I have a strawberry plant on my patio and I can barely take care of it. So, like, I would literally just want, like, another bedroom, and that would kind of be about it. But I almost have this exact same table, and I have a little, in real life, I have a little bin, one of those little canvas bins, those canvas cubes. So, do you remember back in the day, this was a big thing on, like, HGTV, and all of these, like, you know, Oprah would have her home designer on, and he would be talking about ways to kind of, like, corral your clutter, and they would always recommend stuff like that. I have one of those. I have a bunch of them that I bought when I was younger, to kind of organize my walk-in closet. When my parents built a new house, I got a walk-in closet, with some like shelving on top, and I still use them in my own house that also has a walk-in closet that I just used one of the closets from Get Together, because I didn't really want to, like, to build a walk-in closet in The Sims 4 is to create dead space again. At least this is like a functional thing. You can use it as a woohoo spot if you want, because this is, I only end up putting a single bed in this build because that's all I have. I don't have a double bed. Technically, you can sleep 2 people in a full-size bed, but I don't recommend it. It's not very much real estate for 2 people. And then in my real home, those windows are it's actually just a wall and I have some paintings on it. But from the outside, it looked better to have the windows, so I put the windows there. And you can see here I didn't put a computer on that desk. I just put some crafting stuff because that's really what I would like to have. I would like to have a spot that was just for crafting. And I thought about having that be my streaming spot, my streaming setup, since that's what it is in real life. But I wanted to use the video producing station from Get Famous, and it did not fit there at all. So I ended up putting that somewhere else. But I'm cluttering up the mantelpiece right now, and you can see behind me, it's a lot what it looks like. I have like these little statues, and I have some candles usually. And I have these lanterns that I repurposed that were actually taken out of my my parents' home. So we had an old granary, and my dad cleaned it out and put new siding on it a long time ago because it was, I mean, it was literally built in the 1860s, 1870s. So it's like, it was all that old barn wood, and there were like the boards had shrunk over the years, so there were holes everywhere, and we had a bunch of just junk in it. Old tools, old like junk toy cars and stuff. And these lanterns were among that. And they are old vintage, but they're not worth anything. Like, we checked. We tried to see, like, are these something that we shouldn't touch? Are these something that we shouldn't refinish? We looked it up, and no, they're worthless. People repaint these all the time because that's really all they're worth. And they were very rusted up. There was nothing left of the original finish on them. So I just hit it with some rust stabilizer. Like, I literally looked up how to do this. You have to go and you have to spray paint them with something that will kind of help stop the rust, and then you can paint over them with whatever spray paint you want. They technically need another coat. I just have never had it in me, especially now that I live in multifamily housing, to try to find a spot where I can do spray painting. I do have a garage and I could do it in there, but my neighbors always steal my my parking space because I am only one person. I only have one car. So when I use it, it's usually for guests or for service providers. And of course, everybody else, even though it says reserved and it's got a number on it and it's literally in our warranty deeds that we own these parking spaces. That's the way it's always been since the complex was built. People see that and they're like, well, you're not using it, so it's mine now. And it's like, this is just emblematic of all of the problems in the United States. You're not using it and therefore it's mine. Boy, I wonder where I've heard that logic before. Oh yeah, it was Manifest Destiny. Yeah, excellent. This kitchen ends up with a little bit more counter space than I actually have. In real life, my fridge is literally right next to my sink. But in order to have the same number of cabinets in the room for the pantry that I have on the other wall, I had to have that extra space. Basically, in real life, my fridge is a little too wide to have that extra space. So that's why that happens. And also they have to keep it away from the wall a little bit because that's where the electrical panel is in real life. So where that window is actually where my electrical panel is in real life. And I have a chalkboard that's kind of magnetized to it so that it's just covered up because I just don't like the look. And also it's like technically a little bit more functional. So you can see that little wall hanging from the holiday stuff pack that is a free download. So I never feel bad about using it because to me it basically is part of base game to kind of call that back a little bit. But those are the cabinets that I would like to have. Those are not the cabinets that I have in real life. Again, vintage 1978. That kitchen has never been redone. The only thing that was ever replaced was the fridge. Because in order to replace the stove, I would have to redo the entire kitchen. Because stoves in 1978 were half an inch smaller than stoves now. I measured it because the stove is just old, it's dirty, I know it's not fuel efficient at all, the timer on it no longer works, it needs to go, but in order to do that, I have to rip out the cabinetry around it or have it cut down, and the cabinets just aren't worth saving. They're plain, boring, brown, flat face, doesn't even have any hardware on it. Not worth saving, busted up in places. When they replaced the fridge was too big for the space as well, so they had to cut the upper cabinets to make it fit, and they just took a jigsaw to it, one of those reciprocating saws, and they just cut, and it's all wavy, and you can tell like they couldn't follow a line because it was horizontal and those saws are heavy, and clearly they did not have a contractor do this, they just did it themselves, and it's like, it looks so bad. So that's another thing that's on my list. I've had the bathroom redone. I've had the popcorn ceilings taken down. Really the last thing that needs to be done in this property is the kitchen. And someday when it's safe to have contractors come in, maybe I will do that. But you can see here I'm cluttering up the kitchen table because I don't usually eat at my kitchen table. My chairs aren't even as comfortable as the ones you see here. They don't have the arms on them, but they're that same slat back, so I wanted to use them, and I don't have cushions on them. So it is not comfortable to sit there at all. So it's literally just where it's where I like spread out my cooking. I'll do my cooking there, like when I'm making cookies or when I'm making dumplings or something like that. That's my workspace because I don't have very much counter space. And so it's always just full of stuff, and my living room is always cluttered up. Those two little poofs from Tiny Living, I have two upholstered ottomans, cube-shaped ottomans that I use, and I love those. I love those things. I put my blankets in them. I put some of my sewing notions in them as well to kind of keep them contained. But I have one that's literally just full of fuzzy blankets and an electric blanket that I have right now because I don't need it out. But if I had a coffee table, it would be full of clutter just like this. And I put some like laundry out because this is where I go to like fold my laundry and stuff. I literally have a basket of laundry sitting out right now that needs to be folded. And I haven't done that. I should probably do that at some point. But we have the little laundry basket, so I stuck it out there as well. And then if my living room were this big, I would actually have a spot to put a yoga mat. I do have a yoga mat. I don't really do yoga as much as I should. And I say should because I really do need a way to exercise that doesn't take up a lot of space. And I'm on the second floor. There are neighbors directly below me. So I don't like doing like calisthenics or Zumba or something like that very often because I know they can hear me downstairs, and I am very, very self-conscious of that fact. My footsteps are very light and very quiet because when I was growing up, I moved into the attic to use that as my bedroom when I was about 12. Because until then, in my original house, which maybe I'll build on stream sometime, I've built it a couple times before, but it is kind of fun to build that old house because it was basically added onto from an old cabin that was built in the 1860s. But I was in the dining room, the old dining room. So I had this like a big ugly chandelier. It wasn't even gaudy, it was just ugly. I was in there and it wasn't very big, and the attic was just not being used. It was the guest room. And it was so big for a guest room. Like, our guests did not need that much space, so we flip-flopped it when I was 12. And, you know, in an old house like that, the floorboards creaked a lot. If I had to get out of bed in the middle of the night and, like, go downstairs to go to the bathroom, because we only had one bathroom in the house, you know, I didn't want to wake my parents up. It's not that they would, like, come out and yell at me. I was just very self-conscious of the fact that I made a lot of noise, and so I learned to be really quiet. And even on the bottom floor, because it was so old, the floorboards would still creak and stuff. And my father and I both grew up in that house, and so we both learned to be very quiet with our footsteps. So my father can sneak up on people too. I can't sneak up on people as well anymore because I have to have orthotic inserts in my shoes, because when I was young I had really flat feet. Now I don't have flat feet because A, I did ballet, but B, I still have those orthotics in. And I know that I need to have them refitted because you're supposed to have orthotic inserts refitted every several years to make sure that they do still suit your feet. But until recently, I didn't have health insurance that would have covered that. And by recently, I mean like 3 weeks ago, I finally got employer health coverage that is mine to keep. I'm not gonna lose it. when I, you know, I'm not going to lose access to my doctors when I leave, and that's the biggest thing. Is by graduating from grad school. For those of you who don't know, I have a PhD. I lost access to my GPs because I was on the student health insurance, and your GP has to be the on-site doctors in the student health clinic. And so once you're not a student, you can't go see them anymore. So I lost access to my GP, and I lost access to one of my specialists that I need. She worked out of the same place. And now that I have health coverage again that's not Medicaid, I can go ahead and find a permanent doctor, but I have to do that quickly. I'm running out of one of my medications, and that practitioner, it's from one of my specialists, she can't write me a new prescription anymore because I'm not technically her patient anymore. So I have to, within a couple weeks, probably find a new specialist in the middle of a pandemic. I don't know how that's gonna work. I'm a little concerned about it. I'm going to try to find some referrals from my realtor, actually, who lives in the area. My realtor is a family friend who has known my parents for years and years and years, and he recommended my eye doctor, he recommended my dentist. They're both pretty solid recommendations, so I figured he will probably have a pretty good recommendation for a general practice doctor, and then from there I can try to find my specialist. But here you can see I'm doing my bedroom. Now those swords above my bed are to represent a lightsaber. So I have a combat lightsaber that was gifted to me by a friend's high school class. So I have a friend who used to teach high school AP physics. He taught, it was the regular physics and then also the AP physics. And I would go into his classroom every year because my field is physics, and do like demos for them, and then he's like, you're a woman in this higher echelon of that field, you know, I want the students to meet you and I want them to have the experience of talking to you. He says, obviously, you know, I have a lot of girls in my class, you know, he says, and I'm a cis man, you know, I can only tell them so much about what the world is like, and he says, most of what I know about it is from knowing you, so will you please come talk to them? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like one year I took a doer of liquid nitrogen because I worked with cryogens at the time, and we were like, ah, yeah, we're gonna freeze a bunch of stuff, and I've got some superconducting magnets I can show them, because there's a specific type of perovskite magnet. Perovskite refers to a crystal structure. That's all that means. But if you get it cooled down with liquid nitrogen, it actually becomes a superconductor, and that's where you can like put another magnet over it and have it hover. That trick is because one of the magnets is superconducting, and so it has this like closed magnetic field, and there are fancy physics reasons why that works, but basically just know that that's what causes it to hover in place and not like shoot off in one direction or the other or flip around and try to like do what magnets do when they usually come in contact with each other, is one will flip around and they'll want to stick together. There are complicated like electric reasons why that happens, because electricity and magnetism are intrinsically linked. If you've taken like a high school physics class, you're probably kind of familiar with that concept. It's also how electric motors work, actually. Electric motors rely on spinning magnets around because a changing magnetic field will induce a moving electric current. So that's actually how electric motors work. Now you know. But here, I've already done my bedroom. My bedroom, the walls are actually that color. I just don't have crown molding. But in The Sims, if your floors and or walls do not have an environment gain, your Sims will cry that it's badly decorated. And in my experience, it doesn't seem to matter how many other decorations you put in the area. That seems to be the deciding factor. And it's so irritating because now your Sims are just miserable just from your choice of walls. And I get it for the ones that have an environment loss, like that I understand, but just a normal painted wall should not make your Sims uncomfortable. And whoever was crying about how The Sims is too easy because it's too easy to make your Sims happy in The Sims 4, I'm sorry, we have 3 other Sims games you can play. Why are you so on about making The Sims 4 hard? Like, if I want a hard game, I'll go play a different game. I don't understand it. But I put my streaming setup here on the 2nd floor because, again, I wanted to have that video making station. And then also I just put like a really nice computer, and that's a TV monitor actually that I'm using as my second monitor, because that's where my second monitor is. It's right here. And then I have those 2 desk lights because I would like to have key lights. I don't have key lights, but you know, to have them kind of pointed in those directions. And then I would love to have like something nice for you to see in the background besides just this. So I took these 2 bookcases from Moschino stuff and I just filled them up with collectibles and stuff, just stuff that I like looking at. It's not supposed to represent anything specific that I have. I don't have carved wooden statues or anything. I just like the way they look. They slot nicely into those places, and I do end up coming back and changing a couple of them out a little bit later. But for right now, this is what I've got in there. That red OMSP shelf is so useful for cluttering. If you're going to have a piece of Build CC in your game, I really recommend it be that one. You can leave it in your builds if you want. There is a white swatch of it as well. You don't have to have just a bright red shelf, but it has so many snapping points. There are older versions of it that have even more snapping points, but with subsequent expansion packs and stuff, like Discover University broke one of the older versions of it. So you have, instead of like 160 slot points, now we only have 80. Oh no, what will I ever do with only 80 slotting points? I can't imagine trying to use that. And then this little cork board with all the postcards on. I do collect postcards, so when I travel, I always try to buy 1 or 2 postcards from wherever I am. I usually like try to get them from the airport or from like a hotel gift shop. Those are great places to find them. They're cheap, they're easy to transport. They're not breakable. I just have to be careful like not to bend them. So like I can stick them between a couple pieces of clothing and I'm fine, and they'll be just fine. But they're a thing that I really like to bring back, because then I used to stick them in one of those like small photo albums that are just for 3.5 by like, well, not 3.5 by 5, like 4 by 6 photos, and they're like those little flip books. I have a couple of those that I go through every once in a while. Like I've been to Las Vegas, I've been to, like I said, I've been to Kauai. I've been to several places, and my mom used to have people send me postcards from wherever they went on vacation. So I have postcards from places I have never been as well. But it's just something that's kind of nice and kind of fun to be able to look back on, especially if you're the type of person who doesn't like pictures taken of themselves. If you like don't have anybody to take pictures of you and you don't want to be one of the people with the selfie sticks, just get yourself some postcards, especially of like landmarks or something that you have seen personally. It's really nice because they're nice professional photos. It's gonna look good, and you have that to look back on for the rest of your life, which I think is really nice. Now, in real life, I do have an electric keyboard just like that one. It is in my bedroom, but my bedroom in this wasn't big enough to have it where it actually was, because my real bedroom, the door into the closet is only 1 tile wide. But obviously with these closets from Get Together, they are 2 tiles wide. So I couldn't put my keyboard down there. I end up putting a dog bed down there, actually, because as I got farther into this and I was kind of being like, this is kind of like my ideal house. I've built my dream house before. I just don't have a video of it. It's a little bit bigger than this, but I was like, if this is my dream house, I'm gonna have my dog. Because I had a little toy fox terrier. Her name was Mickey because her given name was Mackenzie, and we always joked that the name was bigger than the dog. And she died right before I started grad school. By that I mean like the day before I started grad school. We ended up having to put her down. And I still to this day tear up when I think of her, because I had her for 15 years. She was a very old dog when she died. So, you know, if this were really my dream, she would be in it. So I put in, you know, some dog toys and stuff for her, because they also make really nice clutter as well. Like I originally had that poof sitting there. I end up putting the dog bed there instead. I have this like laundry just kind of sitting there piled, because I actually do have in-unit laundry in my home, which is one of the reasons that I picked it, the other being the walk-in closet in the garage, so that I would have enough storage for like my decorations and stuff. That decorations box that I have between my bed and the wall in here, that's actually where I have a bunch of my decorations. And then having this little back patio with like a little grill. Would I want to maintain that? No. Would I like the idea of having it? Yes, because it is kind of a pain in the butt to try to cook burgers and steaks and stuff on a stove, especially an electric stovetop. So if you look in the kitchen closely, you'll see that's a gas stove. I want a gas stove back so bad. I can't have it because, again, I don't have authority to put one in, but it's so much, I've said this before, it's so much easier to cook on a gas stovetop than it is to cook on an electric stovetop. You just have so much more control. And then this front porch, I didn't really know what to put on it, so I ended up putting some skill building items like that woodworking table. So maybe that's where the statues came from. And then a candle making station, because I thought it was the one that really suited the aesthetic a little bit better, especially compared to like the 3D printer or even the juice fizzer, because I wouldn't fizz my own juice. I don't have that kind of, you know, gumption, I guess. But we're just about done with the build. I'm just doing these final finishing touches, and then I'll be doing some landscaping, and then we are on to the screenshots. So I really just kind of loved filling this up with the different plants and stuff and trying to have it match the aesthetic with these little planters, because again, I would kind of like to have some places to put plants, but you know, kind of a pain in the ass. Not gonna do it. Left you all some seed packets, by the way. I didn't want to drop in the like perfect plants for you, because that kind of, sometimes that's just not fun anymore. You know, you have it perfect, and then like, what do you do after that? The little bird feeder from Backyard Stuff, those. The wind chimes are from Backyard Stuff as well. Backyard Stuff is a really solid little stuff pack, actually. Especially if you're like looking for stuff for landscaping. Romantic Garden Stuff is nice for outdoor stuff as well. That's where those big delphinium flowers are from. And then I use actually quite a bit of Outdoor Retreat, because I think Outdoor Retreat goes really nicely with the aesthetic of this island in Windenburg. So all of the little lavender plants that I'm putting in, those are all from Outdoor Retreat. They're basically the same lavender plant that you have in the base game, but in a different shape. And so it's just kind of quicker and easier to do it that way. And then putting in these trees. I left this island in autumn, so like that's why you're seeing the prices come up on the side of the screen, because I kind of also wanted this to be an autumnal build. It's a trend that's going around YouTube right now. Everybody's kind of in the mood for fall, and these autumnal types of builds. But like those bushes, they're in, I think they're in Get Together as well, but I knew how to find them in Outdoor Retreat, because Outdoor Retreat is a smaller pack with and I already had Show Hidden Objects on, so when I turn on Show Live Edit Objects, the catalog just explodes in size. I don't like having both of them open at once. Usually I just want to have one or the other so that I can find my stuff. But I didn't feel like dealing with it this time and like trying to back out and then come back in and only have Show Live Edit Objects open. So I used Outdoor Retreat for that specifically because it's a smaller pack and has fewer items in it. And then I wouldn't have to spend so much time scrolling and being frustrated that I'm missing stuff. I know there's the mod right now, Better Build By, but the last I knew it was kind of broken. That one and the expanded Build By catalog were both kind of broken, and were crashing games. And I have enough problems with my game crashing. I'm on a Mac, so yeah, I don't want to deal with that anymore. But we're just about done, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please do leave me a like and a comment about what you liked about it. You can subscribe and hit that bell button to get notified when I post new videos. So yeah, enjoy whatever it is you do between now and my next video. Catch you later.